Right, I'm calling the case of the People State of Michigan versus Nicholas Robert Yoder, file 20-777FY. Counsel, identify yourselves for the record.
Joseph Amon on behalf of the people, Your Honor.
Leland Burton for Nicholas Yoder.
All right, today's time and date set for a preliminary examination. Is there anything we need to place on the record before we start?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Amon, your first witness.
Your Honor, we would call Jacob Stillwell to the stand.
All right, Mr. Stillwell is with us electronically. Is that correct? Mr. Stillwell, good morning. Could you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you please raise your right hand where I can see it? Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right. You can put your hand down now. Mr. Amon, you're a witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Stillwell.
Good morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you please state your name for the record for me?
Jacob Stillwell.
And Mr. Stillwell, I'd like to direct your attention to on or about April 26th of 2020. On that date, were you an inmate at the Midland County Jail?
Yes, sir.
All right. And did you know Nicholas Yoder when you were in the jail?
Yes, sir.
And was he an inmate at that time also with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the jail, that's located in the county of Midland, state of Michigan, correct?
Yes, sir.
And on or about this date, isn't it true that Nicholas Yoder came to your cell and slid you something?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you describe what happened there?
I just came in the hole for an incident. When I came in, 20 minutes later, I had something underneath my door. At first, I didn't know what it was, and then I started asking questions towards him. He told me what it was. I hid it in my vent because I didn't want to get in trouble, and then everything went down from there.
Okay, and when you say, when you say you were asking some questions of him, who's him?
Nicholas Yoder.
Okay. And you asked him what it was?
Yeah.
And what did he say it was?
He didn't really acknowledge what it was, but I could tell what it was because of, I don't know, just my knowledge of knowing what drugs are. I just knew what it was. And eventually he came out and told me what it was, but.
Okay. And when he eventually come out and told you what it was, what did he say it was?
Methamphetamine.
Okay. And is that what you thought it was?
Yes, sir.
And what exactly did he slide you under the door?
It was an envelope with it inside of it.
Okay. And did you open up the envelope and look inside?
Yes, sir.
And you suspected it as being methamphetamine when you looked at it?
Yes, sir.
All right. And would you recognize Mr. Yoder if you saw him again?
Yes, sir.
Can you see if he's present here in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us where he's sitting and what he's wearing?
Orange jumpsuit and off to the far right-hand side of the courtroom.
All right. Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
Any voir dire or objection, Mr. Burton?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection or voir dire, the record will reflect the witness identified the defendant.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Stillwell, you said there in your testimony that you hid it in the vent and then everything went down. What do you mean that everything went down? What happened then?
That's when the COs came in, shook my room down. I got the charge of prisoner contraband and possession of methamphetamine charge.
Okay. And they found that in your cell?
Yes, sir.
In the vent where you had placed it?
Yes, sir.
And did you tell them or the police officers where you had gotten it from?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what did you tell them about the incident?
When they pulled me up front, I told them where it was, and they said, did you get it from Nicholas Yoder? And I said, yes.
All right. Thank you, sir. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Yep.
Cross-examination, Mr. Burton.
Thank you, Your Honor. You, when you talked to the prosecutor, Mr. Stillwell, you indicated that something was slid into your cell. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you present when that was being slid into your cell?
Yes, sir.
So did you see that happen?
Yes, sir.
Did you see the person that slid the envelope into your cell?
Yes, sir.
Who was that?
Nicholas Yoder.
And did you have a discussion with Mr. Yoder about a letter from a mutual friend prior to that envelope being slid into your cell?
No, sir.
And did you have were you expecting an envelope to be slid into your cell that day by Mr. Yoder?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right, thank you. Did you immediately look inside the envelope to see what was inside it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did anyone else pick up the envelope before you looked inside it?
No, sir.
Was anyone else inside the cell at the time the envelope was slid inside?
No, sir.
After looking inside the envelope, what did you do?
I asked him what it was, and he was on the phone at the time, so he didn't really tell me what it was. And then I looked in it and took a wild guess what it was, which turned out to be methamphetamine.
Was Mr.
That's
Yoder
what it looked
on
like
the
to me
phone?
too.
Okay. Was Mr. Yoder on the phone when he slid it into your cell?
No.
Did Mr. Yoder answer your question when you asked him what it was?
A little bit, but he was arguing on the phone with someone.
When you say a little bit, what did he say, if you remember?
He said you should know what it is or something like that.
Did you promise Mr. Yoder anything in return for this?
No, sir.
And there came a point in time when you took the envelope and placed it and hid it. Is that correct?
What'd you say?
There came a point in time when you hid the envelope, correct?
Yeah, I hid the envelope in my room so I wouldn't get caught with it.
All right. But eventually the envelope was discovered inside your room, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it was after the envelope was discovered in your room that you talked to the corrections officers. Is that true?
Say that again.
I'll reword it. Was it only after the envelope was discovered in your room that you talked to corrections officers about it?
Yeah.
And prior to that, you didn't go to a corrections officer and tell them that Mr. Yoder had slid something to you, did you?
No, sir.
I believe you stated, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were charged with prisoner in possession of contraband. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And was it only after you learned that you were charged that you indicated that you received the envelope from Mr. Yoder?
No, I knew it was from him from the beginning.
Did you ever tell anyone well, you knew, but did you tell anyone from on the correction standpoint that Mr. Yoder had given it to you?
Yes, sir, when they pulled me out to do a room search.
Okay, after they found it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall whether you told Mr. Krasnowicz or anyone in corrections that Mr. Yoder was giving you an envelope because it contained an address of a mutual friend? Do you remember saying that at all?
I did at first, and then I came out with the truth.
Okay. Were you promised anything today in return for your testimony?
No, sir.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Redirect.
Just briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Stillwell, when Mr. Burton asked if you were promised anything, you were given a plea agreement in your case to testify against Mr. Yoder, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Remains witness be excused.
On behalf of the people, yes, Your Honor.
On behalf of defense.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stillwell. We're all set.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we would call Brian Krzyzanowicz to stand. I can just write it down.
Right up here, please, sir. I want to be sworn. This is the microphone you're going to be picking up is this one. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you go ahead and have a seat. It's up to you, sir. We're more than 6 feet from one another, so you may leave the mask on or take it off to testify.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Brian Krzyzanowicz.
And Mr. Krzyzanowicz, are you employed?
Yes.
And where are you employed?
Midland County Sheriff's Office Jail.
Okay. And what's the purpose of your employment there?
Correctional officer.
Okay. And were you working as a correctional officer on April 26, 2020?
Yes, sir.
And on that date, did you perform a search of Jacob Stillwell's jail cell?
Yes, I did.
And what were you informed prior to doing that search? What was the reason for the search?
That there may have been suspected narcotics in the cell.
Okay. And where did that information come from?
I believe it was from former Deputy Tate at that time.
Okay. And it's my understanding that they saw something on camera. Can you explain that? What you're informed about that?
I don't really know how that information all came about until later.
Okay.
After.
Right. You didn't witness the event on camera, correct?
Correct.
But somebody told you that they had seen something on camera, which is the reason to go search the cell?
Correct.
And what did they inform you that they had seen?
A passing of a letter or note of some sort.
Okay. And after that, you went and searched the cell?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find any contraband in the cell?
Yes.
And what did you find?
A little plastic wrapper baggie that had some powdery substance in it.
Okay. And did you, through your training and experience, did you suspect that as being some sort of controlled substance?
I did.
And where did you find it in its cell?
Underneath the bunk, in the cell, on the wall by the door side.
Okay. Was there a vent there?
Yes.
Okay. Was it inside the vent or outside of the vent?
It was just tucked in or just pushed right into the vent.
Okay. And then after you located that substance, what did you do with it?
Took it down and advised Sergeant Close about it. Then we placed it inside a manila envelope. Well, first we put in a smaller or a bigger Ziploc baggie, then placed inside a manila envelope, placed Scotch tape along the seal, put my initials on it and dated it on the tape and seal.
Okay. And then was it secured somewhere?
Yes, Sergeant Close had contacted Road Patrol Sergeant Millard, and he asked us to put the baggies in a locked area. So at that time, it was decided to place the baggies inside of a mechanical lockbox in the property classification officer's office.
Okay. And it's my understanding that the Road Patrol Deputy McNally from
Hang on a second. Yes,
I'm sorry.
Katrina?
The witness keeps fading off. Can I have him move closer to the microphone, please?
You're a big guy with soft voice, so if you can move right next to that microphone, that'd be good.
It's my understanding that road patrol come out to take a report, and Deputy Mark McNally from the Sheriff's Department came out to the jail, correct?
I was not there for that, but that is my understanding.
Okay, and that's what just
Yeah,
basically is that's your understanding of where the investigation was handed off to?
yes,
Okay, and it's your understanding then too that he took possession of the methamphetamine for evidence purposes?
yes.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Cross-exam?
Did you field test the substance at all?
I did not.
Do you know whether or not it was field tested?
I did not, and I did not see anybody do it myself. My understanding is I believe Deputy McNally had tested it after he took control of it.
Did you speak with Mr. Stillwell that day?
I do not recall speaking to him
Okay.
about, I probably spoke to him earlier in the day, but not about anything about this. So.
Okay. You discovered the substance yourself and pushed into a vent, correct?
Correct,
At that point, you took custody of it, correct?
correct.
And then you and is it Sergeant Close?
Yes,
And at that point, the two of you basically worked the chain of custody on the evidence. That sounds like a summary of what you did, correct?
correct.
Okay. So you didn't go back and investigate by asking questions of Mr. Stillwell, correct?
Correct.
And then did you talk to Mr. Yoder that day about this at all?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect?
No further questions, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
None.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, we have just one exhibit. It's People's Exhibit Number 1. It's a laboratory report from the Michigan State Police for this case. So we move for its admission at this time.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, it is admitted.
And Your Honor, for the record, the lab report did come back positive for methamphetamine.
Okay,
And
thank
I
you.
will offer that to the court.
Any other proofs?
No other proof, Your Honor.
Mr. Burton, do you have any proofs?
No, Your Honor.
Argument? Mr. Emond?
Your Honor, I'd ask that this matter be bound over to circuit court for further proceedings. I think there's probable cause on this record to show that this defendant did commit count 1, delivery of methamphetamine, based on the testimony here today of the two witnesses, and also that he was a prisoner in possession of contraband being methamphetamine. And the lab report was positive for methamphetamine. Based on the testimony in the lab report, Your Honor, I believe there's probable cause to bind this over to circuit court for further proceedings. Thank you.
Mr. Burton?
Your Honor, I would ask that the court not bind this matter up to circuit court for insufficient evidence from which this court could conclude probable cause that the crime was committed by my client. There is probable cause to believe Mr. Stillwell was in possession of methamphetamine that day and a prisoner in possession of contraband. There's just insufficient for this court to determine, or even by a probable cause standard, that my client was in possession of contraband. Thank you.
Right. In this case, the defendant is charged with delivering and manufacturing methamphetamine as a second offense. Second offense for possession of drugs, and also charged prisoner possession of contraband. In this case, the court listened to two witnesses and had one exhibit. Exhibit 1, I'll start backwards here. Exhibit 1 indicates the laboratory results of a container, and it says that it is crystal methamphetamine, a crystalline methamphetamine Schedule 2 narcotic. The defendant was charged with these two crimes. Testimony of Jacob Stillwell, who's an inmate in Midland Department of Corrections, testified that on April 26th of 2020, he was an inmate at the Midland County Jail. Said that he knew Nicholas Yoder, who was also an inmate at the time. He identified the defendant from the Zoom proceedings, saying he was on the far right in the orange. There's only one person wearing orange, only one person in the far right. So I believe that he identified Mr. Yoder. His testimony, Mr. Stillwell's, was his words were he came into the hole for an incident. He didn't explain what that was, but I presume it was some level of punishment that took place, that he had to go back into an area where Mr. Yoder was. said after he was there for about 20 minutes, he had something slid underneath the door. He eventually asked Mr. Yoder what it was, and initially he did not tell him, and then eventually he did. He said shortly after that, his room was searched, and he said initially Mr. Yoder did not tell him what it was, but eventually he told him it was meth. Mr. Stillwell said because he has a history of drugs, he knew what it was. When he looked at it, he said it was meth, and he knew that it was meth. On cross-examination, he testified that he saw someone slide the envelope underneath the door, and he said that it was Nicholas Yoder who slid it underneath the door. He denied that he was just expecting the envelope, but that doesn't matter as to whether or not where it came from. And so the only testimony I have regarding who it could be was from Jacob Stillwell. It's the only evidence that I have in my possession and what I have heard this morning. He testified, Mr. Stillwell, that the deputies eventually obtained the object that was slid into his room. Brian Kruzanowicz is an employee of the Midland County Jail's corrections officer. He was working on April the 6th. He became alerted to the potential issue of contraband being in Mr. Stillwell's room, and he received that information from former Deputy Tate. Somehow it was regarding seeing something on camera, a note or a letter. He searched the room and he found a little plastic baggie type wrapper that had powder in it. It was underneath the bunk, tucked into the vent area in Mr. Stillwell's room. He took the item to Sergeant Close, and then they took care of it, sealed it, put it in a bigger plastic baggie, put it in an envelope, sealed it, signed it, contacted Sergeant Millard from the road patrol, who instructed them what to do as far as obtaining the property. And Mr. Kruzanowicz at that point in time said that they did secure it. So the two charges are whether or not Mr. Nicholas Yoder delivered or manufactured methamphetamine. The only witness I have says there was methamphetamine given to me, and it was given to me by Mr. Yoder. I have nothing to controvert that. That's the only testimony that I have. There was evidence found, and Corrections Officer Kruzanowicz said the reason why they went there is because somebody slid something underneath the door. So if you even take the circumstantial evidence, Mr. Stillwell did not initially bring that into his own room. Something was slid, and the only person we hear of is Mr. Yoder. The lab results said that it was methamphetamine, and the testimony of Mr. Stillwell and the court's own observations of Mr. Yoder, he was a resident of the Midland County Jail, Fast Ice Drive. So therefore, there is sufficient evidence to believe to the probable cause standard that it's probable that Mr. Yoder possessed methamphetamine, which is count 2. He was a prisoner at the time, and therefore it would be enough for count 2. And in count 1, Mr. Stillwell came in possession of methamphetamine, he says, by Mr. Yoder sliding in under the door. So there is probable cause. There's plenty of argument to make to a jury regarding beyond reasonable doubt. But if it's probable, is it probable that Mr. Yoder had the methamphetamine slid underneath the door? It's probable. So I'm going to bind over on both counts. At this time, Mr. Burton, I think the information has already been filed. Do you need me to read that information? It is filed. Do you need me to read that information to your client, or is he familiar with the charges and the maximum penalty?
Familiar, we would waive its reading, and if the court would enter a not guilty plea on his behalf, we'd appreciate it.
I would do that. And is there anything we need to deal with as far as bond is concerned? Mr. Ament?
Nothing from the people you're on.
No, he's under sentence, so no, other than revoking.
Okay. So if we give him a bond, he would be out on bond sitting in jail anyway.
No appeal.
Yep. All right. We'll be adjourned. Bond will be continued. Thank you.
Hey, Your Honor, can I request the transcripts from the court date? Is that something I gotta write the courts about, or
Which one?
I want?
This one?
I mean, this one. I want the last.
This one. This will get ordered, I suspect, because of when we have preliminary examination. Typically, the prosecutor and defense attorney both order them. If you order them, you may have to pay for them. So if Mr. Burton orders them, then That's handled different.
No, I get it.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Burton, I presume you want a copy of the transcript.
I will.
Okay, so that gets a copy.
Your Honor,
Mr.
I take
Amon,
the evidence.
returning the evidence back to the people will be adjourned. Thank you.